Good morning, entertainment brother.
Oh, brother, where art thou?
You know, we have a confession to make, or at least I do. Mm-hmm. We may not have many listeners, or not as many as we might want, but we have very devoted ones.
We do.
Including my friend Ted.
Okay.
Who wanted to point out to me that when we used the phrase, or I used the phrase, the wheels of justice in a prior episode, he wanted to note that the wheels of justice don't roll, they grind.
Mm-hmm.
And I was somewhat embarrassed by that mistake that we made. He also took issue with your quote about when the law is on your side. He wanted to refresh your memory. When the law is on your side, pound the law. When the facts are on your side, pound the facts. When neither is on your side, pound the table. It's the use of the verb pound.
I think I take exception with that. When the law is on your side, you argue it.
But I think it's the pounding part.
The pounding part comes as the third part because you're desperate and you don't have anything to argue, so you pound.
I think it was the alliterative use of the word pound.
Meaning what?
Well, you pound the law, you pound the facts, and then you pound the table.
No, I'm not getting it.
The point is that he's a careful listener.
You know what? True. And we want that.
He'd probably be horrified by the metaphor I'm about to use about the wheels of justice slaloming down the hill.
They are slaloming. I mean, come on.
Right over the back of retired optometrist Terry Sanderson.
Yes.
We're talking, of course, about the Gwyneth Paltrow ski accident trial that just concluded in Utah.
Yeah.
Paltrow was victorious. The lawsuit brought against her by said optometrist, Mr. Sanderson, failed. He had been wanting $300,000 for what he claimed was a variety of injuries, including 4 broken ribs, mental issues, emotional issues that led, in fact, to the end of his relationship with his girlfriend. It was quite a sad story, but the jury wasn't buying it.
No.
This, we can't help but contrast with the other big trial that we covered a year ago, which was the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial.
Right.
There is something about both cases, particularly this one, I think, that is so little about the law as opposed to celebrity, and we will get there in a moment. But first, ladies and gentlemen, from Times Square, we are the Entertainment Brothers. Welcome back. We're talking ski accidents and Gwyneth Paltrow. This has been an interesting case. I was out of town and watching it and covering it, listening to it rather, and was fascinated by the degree of coverage that was given to it. Obviously, the key reason for that was that it was on television. You could see it. Mm-hmm. And, you know, the idea of free tape of a celebrity on trial is gripping, right? Mm-hmm. There's something about a courtroom and about the promise, the potential promise of a celebrity being brought down to the same level as others, particularly when it comes to someone like Gwyneth Paltrow, is interesting. Anyway, we'll get to that in a minute. Any thoughts about the legal case here and what this was about?
This one.
Let me ask you. Let me give you a prompt.
Yeah.
Should this even have come to trial? Is there something about the idea that all of this manpower and time and money was spent over what the jury decided, it seems to me within hours or two, was complete BS?
Well, I always look at the money, right? That, in other words, she doesn't have to pay anything to him, to the doctor, but she has legal fees that are...
And he has to pay those.
Well beyond... Okay, right. But...
which he'll appeal, I'm sure.
Right. However, if I'm her, I don't want to have that kind of profile in the courtroom. Okay, she did complain at one point about the camera being on her face too long. Mm-hmm. That was actually an objection. Mm-hmm. So that's obviously at that point, it was getting to her.
Right.
Where she was concerned about that.
Well, look, here's the difference between the Johnny Depp case and this case, right? Johnny Depp wanted to be in court, right? He wanted to be heard. He brought the case.
He did.
In this case, she indeed had countersued when Sanderson sued her, but she didn't want to be there.
No.
But she also didn't want to knuckle under and pay any kind of damages.
Right.
So in that, the motivation was similar to Depp, right? Depp believed that he was in the right.
Yeah.
Paltrow believed she was in the right.
Right.
And despite probably people around them saying, do you really want to go to court? They both said yes.
Yeah.
Obviously, what was at stake in this this case, in the Paltrow case, was not at all as grave as what was in the case of Depp and Heard, right? There were allegations of obviously domestic abuse and his reputation as being, someone who abuses women. I mean, the stakes were way, way, way higher than they were in this. Right. In this case, it became more of this meditation on Gwyneth Paltrow, who is one of those stars that has been the subject of this kind of treatment for the past 25 years, since she won an Oscar for Shakespeare in Love. Right. She is someone who people, and I say mostly women, right, are kind of obsessed with. Yeah. Right? Because she's someone who seems perfect on the outside, which of course can be both alluring and maddening to people. And she's someone who has triggered these kinds of emotional responses over time. I'll tell you a quick little story. I had put her on the cover of People magazine as the most beautiful woman in the world. Wow. One of the she loved that. One of the annual features that we did. Right. And we had talked about doing it. She was willing to do it and cooperate. And there were people who wanted to do it, and there were people who didn't want to do it because she's so polarizing. Anyway, we did it. And the initial reaction was not good. It was just at the start of kind of social media, and we were getting bombarded with just hate emails about how we could have done this. And certain executives at the company I worked at were really quailing and thought we had made a terrible, terrible mistake. And how could we have done this? And why didn't we listen? And we all knew that she was polarizing, and this was a terrible error. Anyway, it sold unbelievably well. Right. And in that story is the microcosm of Gwyneth Paltrow. Right. There are people who hate her, and there are people who love her. Yeah. Goop, her home healthcare and wellness company, would not be the success that it is if everyone really didn't like her. Yeah. They love to hate on her, but they don't hate her, and they secretly admire her. And you can harbor, both of those thoughts and both of those feelings, and they can be reconciled in the same person. Yeah. Anyway, she has that strange quality of being someone who is fascinating and polarizing. And that's what this trial was about, because it was an opportunity to see her cast in a role, literally, of someone who, is she too big for justice? What's going to happen? And there were all these stories about her clothing and these idiotic pieces like that in places like the Washington Post and the New York Times. Mainstream media, who you and I both know, really don't know how to cover celebrity. So they cover it with like, what is she wearing and what is she trying to say? Yeah. Anyway, I'm with you. The legal case was pretty straightforward. It sounded like... what was interesting about it is that the versions of what happened between both camps were so different. Yeah. She basically said he kind of skied in behind her. They were on a bunny slope, which if you ski, you really can't get that much speed up. Even if you were bombing down the hill, by the time you get to the bottom slopes, you can't really be going that fast. Yeah. And that he kind of like skied in between. She was having a lesson with her son and an instructor, and he sort of skied between her legs. Yeah. And she thought maybe it's someone who's trying to sexually molest her. Right.
She actually went that far.
Yes, she did.
In her defense.
That's correct.
It's almost saying that he did, and that he was grunting. And I was waiting for the next step. Right. Wow.
He claimed totally the opposite, that she was uphill and that she came barreling into him. Right. And that he broke 4 ribs. Right. As you well know.
He did break 4 ribs.
He did. And as you well know, I broke 4 ribs about a year and a half ago. Yeah. You got to fall pretty damn hard to break 4 ribs. Yeah. Even if you're a man in your early 70s. Right. The idea that Gwyneth Paltrow somehow triggered him breaking 4 ribs, I don't know. I just can't. I'm trying to work out the velocity and the physics of this, and I don't really see it.
I think, though, I'm not sure if there was evidence to prove that the ribs were broken or not. You can't really prove that. Well, right? It's not like.
Well, you can't. But okay. Because they're not broken now. Yeah. But he apparently skied downhill. Yeah. Let me tell you something, friend. Yeah. When I broke my 4, I wasn't skiing anywhere. I couldn't get off the floor. Yeah. Okay. So. Yeah. But again, that was not germane, and that really wasn't what was brought here. But it was whether or not she had caused it. And I just wonder, how did this get this far? And because neither one would settle. That's why.
Neither one would settle. You don't know who was influencing who. I have a friend who was saying that it had a lot to do with insurance, and that insurance companies might have said, go out there and fight it, and we'll back you up or whatever. But this case from Get made no sense to me. None. The first thing that doesn't make any sense to me at all are the numbers. Okay? If you're telling me you have brain damage and you're suing for $300,000, that's hard to believe. I mean, if that's me, I'm suing for $30 million. I've been permanently damaged. Okay. Then her counterclaim was to go at him for $1 million. Okay. Based on whatever he did to her, assuming you believed it. And right from there, the numbers don't make sense. They don't make sense. And then, so now we're moving forward. And I don't know that I've ever seen, in terms of, okay, this is about justice and being in court, but just in terms of, I'm not so sure that the witnesses were believable, either one of them. Like, I was trying to pick one over the other and I couldn't. And then also, the attorneys there were times when they were sort of objecting and not objecting. And the whole thing to me does not make sense. And I again, when I was looking, especially when the doctor was testifying, it didn't seem like he had any brain damage.
Right.
Right?
What do you think was the most damaging thing to his case? I
think the video, they played a video showing, that he did basically what she said he did, right? I don't think that helped his case at all.
Right.
The other thing is, okay, I've never, ever in my life seen two more unrelatable, unsympathetic witnesses. Mm-hmm. There was just nothing in there. I was looking for authenticity in either one of them. I was looking for believability in either one of them.
You mean Sanderson and Paltrow?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I didn't see it at neither point. And I'm not sure why, just because of timing, I was able to actually watch the testimony of both.
Right.
Right?
It's interesting, we have this other trial that's coming up, a criminal case, the Rust case, right? Which is also taking place in the American West, right? And it pits, at least on the surface, celebrities against ostensibly, different kinds of communities. Now, in the case of New Mexico, we've talked about how the prosecutors there have really tried to make an issue about, Baldwin's quote unquote, big city lawyer trying to bill a lot of hours, from his client, and really trying to make it a kind of like us against them, people with traditional values versus these big city slickers who come in and make movies and don't follow the rules. I think there may have been a hint of that attempted in this case, and it failed miserably. And I can't help but think that Paltrow's attorneys knew that. Let me take for an example. Retired optometrist versus Hollywood movie star, right? I mean, there's your kind of contrast right there. So there's an attempt to sort of make him be somewhat different. And that she ran into him and didn't, stay and take care for him and check on him, and that he has been denied now all kinds of, pleasures because of this injury. I thought it was very telling that as part of the attempt by Paltrow's attorneys to tear down his case, they showed photo after photo after photo of his European trips, which were to very kind of ordinary, a lot of places to Italy and things like that. He'd been to the Netherlands 3 times. He traveled quite a bit.
Right.
But it showed, I think they were trying to show that this guy is perhaps more upper class or upper middle class than you may care to believe. And the idea of casting this as a class issue, which I think the moment you get Gwyneth Paltrow in a story, it potentially becomes that, failed miserably. Let's also remember that both of them were skiing at one of the most exclusive resorts in the United States. You have been to Deer Valley. I've been to Deer Valley. It's in Sundance.
Yeah.
Or it's in Park City, which is where Sundance is.
Yeah.
It's an exclusive place.
Absolutely.
Now, that doesn't mean that people who ski there are all of a certain economic class.
Yeah.
But I think any attempt to sort of paint her as being a above the law celebrity failed. And was bound to fail, probably most importantly, based on the facts.
I mean, just from the beginning, right? You're like, well, it's a he said, she said kind of thing.
Right.
And there's no real substantive evidence either way. I mean, there's not a gun. Right. There's not really even a smoking gun. There's just two people giving different versions of what happened. Going back also, this was a case about privilege in one sense, right? Everything about it was, you had a doctor, you had a celebrity, they're at a fabulous, famous ski resort that, is of a certain socioeconomic class.
Sure.
And so I think that part of it, I know at least online, and what a lot of people were saying was that, they were kind of, here's what I was seeing, on Twitter and certain places. People were hating on both of them.
Right.
That's what was really funny. And I kept trying to, I have my own opinion, and then which I've expressed here, right? Like I don't know. After everything was done, I'm like, I threw my hands up. I have no idea.
Okay, well, one of the joys of doing this show with you is that you're an attorney, and I can ask you, what would you have done if you were representing him?
Right.
What would you have done differently than they did? Well, first of all, would this have gone to court?
No.
No,
I wouldn't go there.
Really?
I wouldn't go there. This is my point, okay? He's suing her for nothing. Like, I don't get it. Like, if you're going to sue, go for the $30 million. Okay.
Right.
And you're claiming that you have brain damage. Here's the struggle that I had. Okay. You're asking me is that he's up there claiming he has brain damage, but he's so coherent and articulate. And like, I'm waiting for him to write me a script.
Which is not to say he doesn't have brain damage and emotional issues and even some physical ones, but they're so not apparent.
Correct. I don't want to lighten what might actually be the case.
Yes.
There was certain testimony that would support that, right?
But he's not being wheeled into the courtroom like, Harvey Weinstein.
Correct. But in addition, again, in the same way to me, she's just absolutely unrelatable. Mm-hmm. He was absolutely unrelatable. Mm-hmm. So I've never seen a case where both people were equally unrelatable. Depp v. Heard, we saw, there was one way or the other. A lot of people were going for Johnny Depp, right? In this case, it seemed to me like both of them were the same and they were neutralizing each other.
Right.
And then when I took it a step further and went to their counsel and their attorneys, they didn't seem like the dream team of law, either one of them, or as groups.
Well, there was the issues when when Paltrow was being cross-examined by his attorney, where the woman was kind of like almost trying to like become her pal, right?
Yes.
Asking how tall she was. And these strange questions.
Okay, really
that seemed kind of almost celebrity stalking.
Okay. I mean, look, people don't understand who are not around it every day how big a factor that can be. And as much as you may be, you're an attorney every day, you're out there slugging, and all of a sudden you're in front of her and your soul gets revealed.
Right.
As much as you're supposed to be objective and you're supposed to be fighting on behalf of your client, if you've never seen a star ever, you get starstruck.
So let's talk about that in
Not
relation
like me.
to.
I mean, I grew up around them all.
Let's talk about that in relation to upcoming cases, in particular Rust. Right, much has been made about the New Mexico officials there, and much has been made clearly about somehow painting Alec Baldwin as the bad guy, right? And his willingness to talk has, at least in the early stages, bitten back at him, right? It was mixed up. It was statements that seemed to be contradictory that he gave to the police and to the press that in many ways led to the charges against him. Correct. We all know what his history is about being a hothead and someone who flies off the handle. Mm-hmm. One would imagine that is part of the prosecutor's strategy in New Mexico to get him on the stand and to have him, say something that's intemperate at best and at worst incriminating. Mm-hmm. How do you, as an attorney, and I go, every celebrity is different and every case is different, but are there things that you should do or avoid if you are an attorney when you cross-examine someone who is known to the people who might be watching this trial?
Well, I don't think you want to appear, if you're representing one party or the other, you don't want to appear like you're being friendly and not going after the person and doing your job. And that came across to me.
Do you also, at the same time, not want to appear to be overly hostile and attacking?
You never, ever, ever want to appear to be attacking or overly hostile.
Really?
The great ones, every attorney, right, has a conversational way of putting it out there, but also like holding you to the fire. Mm-hmm. Okay, when we looked at the Murdaugh case, one of the things that we haven't talked about it that concerned me was that the prosecutor, I thought at a certain point, was being too hot.
Right.
Okay.
I agree with you.
Yeah. But that didn't turn out to.
No.
Okay. So, I think that when you're getting into the higher levels of trial law and litigation, that's the greatest skill right there, is to cross-examine, okay, and make it conversational enough where you're trying to trip the person up, appear to be firm, but not hostile and antagonizing. Okay, so in the same way, you're trying to get your witness to be relatable. You as the attorney don't want to appear too smart. You don't want to appear unrelatable. You want to appear authentic.
Right.
And when I saw this cross-examination, I'm like, wow, she is starstruck.
Right.
It flipped me out, actually. It flipped me out.
So this is going to sound like cherry.
Like I was waiting for her to say, "Can I have your autograph?"
Well, it sounded that way, and that's the way it played in the media.
That's like, whoa.
Right.
If that's my attorney,
And it may have been a way to sort of ingratiate herself and give, Paltrow a false sense of comfort, but it backfired.
It was too much.
I agree with you.
It was too much.
So this is going to sound like cherry picking of different trials, but we have the Depp Heard case from last summer. We have the Kevin Spacey, Anthony Rapp case from the fall.
Yeah, we do.
And we now have this case. In all of these cases, the bigger name, the celebrity, there obviously in the Depp Heard case, there was 2 celebrities, and in the Rapp Spacey case, there were 2.
Right.
The bigger name won.
Correct. Good point.
Is there anything to learn from that? I mean, again, every case is different, but we have 3 cases, and we have a kind of pattern, arguably, developing. Is there anything to learn from that? Meaning that celebrities are always going to get, the celebrity thumb is always going to be on the scale?
Well, the percentages say that. You're bringing out 3 cases, right? So if you're coming to me and you're going to sue a celebrity, I'm going to have second and third thoughts unless I know I have evidence that can bring them down.
Right.
Okay. And we've seen that happen with other people, right? But you really have to take a different posture and consider that. Because people are starstruck. The world is starstruck. The world, the universe is starstruck. Right. Okay. And when it's not just that people are starstruck with their soul, that's a distraction to everyone. Right. The fact that the universe is starstruck. It's a distraction, not in your favor.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm going to ask this quickly and skate past it because it's inescapable that we can't bring this up. But and we don't want to minimize what is a very, very serious case to something about entertainment. However, the Paltrow news was eclipsed in recent days by the indictment of Donald Trump. Right. Do you think that very same philosophy that you just elucidated about being starstruck will apply, and how will it apply should Donald Trump come to be in a trial? Well,
he likely will. Okay. But if and when he does, then you have someone who this is someone probably, the 3rd most famous person in the world. Like, right. I'm not sure I know. So he's on another level,
right?
Yeah, of celebrity. Yeah. Because he's a president. Yeah. Right. He's a political star, and he's a celebrity all in one. Yeah. Right. So everything aside, I mean, that's powerful.
Right.
That's powerful. Right. And we're likely going to see some form of a circus, right? There's going to be people impressed, but then there's going to be supporters out. So this is really could be the biggest trial we've ever seen. In fact, it's so big, it's kind of scary.
I know.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
Moving on to other trials, we have this fascinating case involving former Fugees Pras Michel.
Yes.
And a guy named Jho Low. Jho Low is interesting. He was a figure in a huge financial scandal involving the Malaysian Sovereign Fund, which was a massive, massive pile of money that was run by the Malaysian government. He somehow, as I recall, may have been related or may have been friends with someone in the Malaysian government. Anyway, he had access to tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. And he used a lot of it to invest in entertainment in the United States, including the funding of the movie The Wolf of Wall Street. And he basically, it's alleged, looted this sovereign fund and spent all kinds of money on all kinds of entertainment projects and other things that he wasn't really supposed to be doing. Anyway, among the tens of millions of dollars, it is alleged, were $88 million that went to Pras Michel to act as an agent on this guy's behalf to try to influence government to stop investigations into the spending of this Malaysian sovereign fund. That's about as simple as I can make it. There's all kinds of complicated twists and turns, all kinds of figures involved in this. But the feds have brought felony charges against Pras Michel, that he wasn't registered as a foreign agent, among other charges. And the trial just commenced in Washington. It's very complicated, but we care about it because it is involving a formerly prominent rap figure. He was in the Fugees in the 90s. They
were the biggest act out there.
And, he's being depicted by the government as being a kind of washed-up rapper who was looking to take some kind of money. This guy made $88 million, it is alleged, from this Malaysian guy. That's a pretty good payday for, a former rap star.
Yeah.
What do you make of this?
I always wonder, first thing, is how did these people ever get to meet each other and take their relationship to the level where
they're getting $88 million.
Right. Okay. Fascinated by that. But, it's just going to depend. I mean, is this going to settle? It could potentially settle, right? But if everything is as being said, then I think that, he has a lot to be worried about because when I read this, here's what popped out at me. What are they going to come at him with? They're coming at him with the fact that he's not registered,
which is something the feds
sort of like, you're a Fuji. Why are you?
I know,
register?
And this is kind of esoteric. I remember there were people involved in the Trump campaign. There have been some charges brought against former Trump transition team members. Michael Flynn, I believe, was accused of being a foreign agent and not representing that when he represented Turkey, I think. Anyway, this is a kind of high-level dog whistle federal charge that involves people operating at a level that ordinary people just don't understand, which is why I think it's possible that this thing could all come apart for the feds. This is incredibly complicated.
Yeah.
And ordinary people who are being asked to make decisions on this, and in a lot of these cases, these people, either their cases, they don't get convicted or they get overturned. Because it's a very subtle notion about lobbying. And of course, in Washington, everybody's a lobbyist if you're not in government.
Come on, everybody.
So I don't know. I saw these opening statements from the federal attorney who basically said the defendant needed money and was willing to do anything to get it, including being an agent of the Chinese government. And we know the word Chinese is, now verboten down there.
Yeah.
It's going to take a lot more to convict him than saying the guy was desperate for cash and got money. I mean, I just don't know.
I agree.
I think this
Welcome to Hollywood.
We're going to be wait.
If we're okay to the point of, and I agree with you. And then, like I said, when I first read this, I'm like, okay, he doesn't have a license. That's really, so far from what I can see, what they're coming after him for.
But I'm with you, and I think the more interesting story is how does a guy, Malaysian guy with tens of millions of dollars say, I need help with the government, let me go hire Pras Michel?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Me, Washington is full of former, grandees like the late Clark Clifford and people like that.
Correct.
Who know Lanny Davis.
Correct.
Who know their way around town.
Yeah. But then, okay, let's take it a step further.
How you end up with Pras Michel?
To the
At least
extent,
we could have hired Lauryn Hill. If you need a Fuji.
That would have been okay. That would have been the bomb, right? Bring her out. Okay. To the extent that any of this is going to go to the place that he financed the film in Hollywood, and they're trying to in any way just bring that in from left field or right field or whatever, that's going to fail because a lot of films that are financed in Hollywood have questionable origins or investors or backers. People may not know this, but a lot of films that are financed in Hollywood, there may be a studio name that you see, but then there's 10 other quote unquote investors. and they come from all walks of life and all places. So to the extent he did that with Wolf of Wall Street, take that one and throw it out. That one's going nowhere.
And, supposedly Leo DiCaprio's on the witness list to talk about that.
Let's talk about a star. I mean, if Leo testifies, I'm in on that. And then
I guess, but I just think this is an incredibly complicated case.
And that's the other thing, okay? So this is really like on a higher level. Was there an actual crime? I mean, and so you have to then think that the concepts and what they're trying to prove are so complicated that good luck.
Well, here's an indication of the kind of trials and the kind of cases that get heard in these federal courts in Washington. Pras Michel, according to Politico, is the highest profile defendant from outside the political world to go on trial in federal court in Washington since Major League Baseball pitcher Roger Clemens stood trial on perjury charges 11 years ago. So basically, this is a court that is designed for lobbyists and politicians and business agents and other people involved in government, and they operate, well, certainly not in secrecy, but in these very kind of specialized cases. So it remains to be seen whether or not
is he as famous as Roger Clemens? I mean, I see this as like a zero-sum game in the sense that Roger Clemens was famous. If you didn't tell me who he was when you sent this to me, you had to tell me.
Right.
Because I didn't know who he was.
You don't know your Fugees?
I know my Fugees. I'm not like Mr. Fuji. Right. I mean, I know who they are. I mean, I know Lauren, right? Yeah. But I don't really know the rest of the band.
Well, it's been a long time. And again,
it has been a long time.
And again, to compare to this case that they refer
to. Take me back to
my
puka shells.
As they refer to this story, Roger Clemens was charged with perjury. Okay,
yes.
Ordinary people can understand perjury.
Absolutely.
Did you
it's
lie?
simple. You
it's
lied
simple.
under oath.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so we'll see what happens in this case. But very, very interesting cases, both small and large.
Totally.
But that's what we do.
Yeah. 100%.
Exactly. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors about the Entertainment Brothers. Yep. Next week, we'll be back with more kinds of stories. Maybe not all in the courtroom, but the courtroom is,
that's okay.
as we have said,
we'll take them
it is the theater of the law.
It is.
And we like that.
It is.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Next time.
Bye.
Thank you.